Hey, Stoney here with another over-explained video, and in this video we're going to talk about the current emerging meta with the RAIDEN. Let's go. Alright, at the bottom here I am playing as an aerial specialist, and I am up against Andy playing as a farseer specialist. And this game is around 2000 MMR and is played right after they ninja patched the RAIDEN on January 3rd. So this is as new of a patch as there is, and in this patch they did nerf the damage of RAIDEN, they increased the cost of certain technologies, and we're going to take a look at a few of these games played at the current patch, and I'm going to talk about why it is currently still strong, how you can use this technology in your, or this unit rather, in your games, and get some quick MMR before the community and especially the developer reacts. And to start off, we have Sledgehammer's Arclight, and we're going to go asymmetrical aggro on the far right. My opponent has the same idea with the Sledgehammer, but he has the Marksman going asymmetrical on the left-hand side. So we're essentially going to have a race into each other's tower, but the only difference is that my opponent has these big marksmen, so once my fans disappear, I don't think I have enough damage output to actually deal with his board. So we're gonna have to fix that in the later rounds. So let's talk about the RAIDEN for a little bit. So far, I think the biggest problem with the RAIDEN is it kind of does everything. Right? It's supposed to be a big, medium-sized unit killer, but I've used it, and at a certain point, it just kills all kinds of unit, medium or not. And we had like a similar issue back in the days with the Vulcan, where it was supposed to be a small-sized unit killer, but because of the Scorch technology, and also back then we had the ER Vulcan card, which gives it 50% increased damage, it becomes a giant killer as well. And that's how I feel about the RAIDEN right now, because it just does everything once you have enough number of them. All right, we're getting into round 2. Nothing really out of ordinary, right? My opponent is trying to win some grounds on his weak side, and I'm also trying to put down some units to defend on my weak side. So nothing really out of the ordinary. I am aerial spec, which means I am planning on going RAIDEN this game. RAIDEN pairs really well with your conventional unit composition that also works well with boats. So for example, you can use it with Sledgehammers, you can use it with Typhoons, you can use it with Fire Badgers. But my favorite unit so far in this season has actually been the Arclights. Arclight has always been very strong. If you read the notes from Forgotten Arbiter on Reddit, he said that Arclight is by far the most efficient chaff clear unit per cost, and not only they have some of the best range for chaff clear, they also stay all the way till the end of the round. And I feel like it's a fantastic combo with the RAIDEN, because RAIDEN themselves, since they're so good at just getting rid of medium-sized units, I don't feel like they need that much of a shield. Like with boats, like Typhoon boat, the reason that it works is because the Typhoon actually does a lot of tanking, preventing the boats from being just one-shotted by AM marksman. But in this case, I feel like the RAIDEN deals with marksman just fine. It's just the chaff clear that has some serious problem with, and in that case, Arclight is my current favorite chaff clear. Alright, we're at round 3 being aerial spec. I was able to bring a single RAIDEN onto the board. My opponent is rocking a couple marksmen and now with the farseer. So in a commanding lead, because the RAIDEN are just getting picked apart by these marksmen. Now, if the RAIDEN were a boat and you're looking at this situation was like, oh no, right, we're being countered super hard starting at round 3, because you know there's going to be AA at some point. And usually when you run a boat and your opponent takes AA, you go Mothership, or you go with a couple Wasps. RAIDEN does not run Mothership, so what do you do now? Right, good question. So let's see how this game develops. Getting into round 4, we got our first unit drop. Triple Tarantula is being offered. Tarantula is pretty darn good on the line, especially with high explosive. And since my opponent primarily runs this chaff, he does not have any giants. So he has fans and his tanks and his marksmen. And this is actually a fantastic board for my units to get into as long as I can survive to that point. In order for this board to work in my favor, I will need a few technologies. I will need range and high explosive on the Tarantula so I can get rid of his front line. I will also need range and chain on my Raiden so that I can start hitting these marksmen which are hiding currently behind his front line. But even without this technology, I mean, just looking at the current round, right? I'm doing not a terrible job. If my Tarantula survive, which it should, provided that I give them enough chap cover, I would have been able to clear this entire side, and with the power debuff, I can then clear his other side as well. So already, like, there is a plan in motion, and the question is, can I get there before I get destroyed? Incendiary is pretty useful. I want to get Incendiary, just kind of clear the side of the board. Taking range on the Raiden first and taking range on the Tarantula. So now they're double range, and that should give us some advantage into these marksmen and sledgehammers, which currently do not have range. Additional fangs went down, and these fangs are going to get shield later on. And of course, we're going to start sell off our other type of chap units. So Tarantula, I think when they're on the line, are slightly better than Arclight simply because of high explosive and also the amount of HP that they do have. Alright, so the Raiden is starting to put in the work here. Kind of getting stuck on this level 2 crawler a little bit, which is unfortunate. Ooh, this Tarantula did not get that marksman. That marksman is going to do so much damage. A little unfortunate, but not so terrible. Alright, getting into round 6. We got ability drops. Enhancement module is really good because I already have intensive training. Smoke bomb gets added in here. I could have shielded on the smoke bomb, but now I feel like since my units do have range, it may not be that big of a deal. So I'm just going to continue to get to that perfect composition. So right now I have all the tech that I need. Range with high explosive on the Tarantulas. Range and chain on these Raidens. Now the smoke is actually going to do a little bit of work here, because what happens in this current matchup is that my fans are going to get destroyed very quickly, which allows their marksmen, which are now level 4, and these guys are level 2, to log onto my Tarantula a little bit faster. So without chaff clear, with all these shielded fans, there's going to be a bit of an issue later on in the round. I continue to shuffle units out, so I sold the Sledgehammer here earlier. I think eventually I want to sell this pack of Sledgehammer and replace them with another Tarantula, or just get more Raiden. So the really scary part of Raiden is that with chain, it potentially can hit up to 6 units per shot, right? Because the chain causes the lightning bolt to jump once, and it fires 3 lightning bolts every time. So 6 units per shot, and that should be enough to wipe out a squad. If you're, let's say, maybe not level 1, but level 2 riding a squad of sledgehammers in one shot. And if your marksman just happens to be within 60 meters of that range, and usually they are, because that's like 2 squares behind or 3 squares behind, you can wipe out the marksman. And just like that, like you see right here, this Raiden was just hitting that tank and it was jumping to that marksman, and now it's down to a very low HP. However, it wasn't able to jump from this sledgehammer, so my opponent is going to get a win here, primarily because of this smoke. Alright, things are looking pretty grim, right? You're looking at my HP, you're looking at my opponent's board. You notice, right, all this high-level marksman, and it's just gonna pop this Raiden like it was nothing. But let's see how we can turn this back. Phantom Ray was offered. Phantom Ray was chosen specifically for their shield. I needed some sturdy chap in front of the Raiden. I know it is a very, very expensive investment, However, I had the choice of either going Phantom Rays or Shielded Wasps. Since my opponent already has so many fans, and Shielded Wasp is just a very straight up counter with Mustangs, I don't want my opponents to get Mustangs. I want them to keep putting down this marksman because that gives the Raiden the ability to just jump their lightning over and just kill them very quickly. So we're going to put down some Phantom Rays from the drop. We're going to give them shield, and they should tank a couple shots even with aerial specs. So we're going to see how that works. And we're just going to give a round of levels onto this Phantom Rays. Oil gets put down here, pretty deadly, especially on top of the smoke. I was anticipating that, so that's why the shield in front of them. We added shield on his fangs because my opponent doesn't really have efficient chaff clear just yet. None of his unit actually has range. The tarantulas don't have HE, they have no stone collars. So our board is starting to look a little bit better. Now let's see this rounding action here. We're at 676 HP. My opponent kept adding more marksmen. In theory, this is a perfect defense into whatever I have, right? All right, we're gonna slow this game or this round all the way down here. We're gonna see some really cool interactions with Raiden and why this is currently pretty darn powerful. First of all, right here, this cluster, we have fans at the front, but the Raiden does not care. It is going to shoot this fan and it's going to kill this marksman. Right? We got a big rhino coming in on the other side. Okay, granted, Raiden are terrible with single target damage. That is just one of the big weaknesses of Raiden, and we'll talk about how to defend with or against Raiden in the later part of this video. But just look at this. Raiden getting the arc light, taking down half of the tower health. Right? Pretty darn good. Alright, this guy coming here. Finally gets onto the big rhino. No problem. Big tarantula still struggling, but it is doing a lot of tanking, so can't complain there. This Raiden coming in, boom! Chain lighting kills that marksman without even having to target it. Boom! Chain lighting kills that marksman with that fang right there. And this is just so oppressive. Like, there's no way you can defend against it. The only real way of defending it is just to spread your units out. But once the round starts, the distance between your units aren't being determined by how far you actually spread them out in deployment. It is defined by the actual range difference between the units themselves. Fangs shoot at 75, marksmen shoot at 165. In theory, these marksmen should stand further behind, but in practice, these fangs will stop like right here because of my unit. So there is really no way you can actually spread them out perfectly to avoid the chain. There's just no way. Which means the Raiden with the chain can go through things like fan and arc lights, fan and marksman. You can go through things like forts and marksman because the marksman and forts will always walk pretty close. You could go through things like forts and mustangs. The mustang will simply die. A lot of the common standard composition that used to be really good into, boat compositions are no longer viable. All right. So one thing I did this round, I'm sorry I was talking about the Raiden so much, is I actually double leveled the big chunky Raiden in the middle because it's got the enhancement module, sold it, level up this Raiden, and then bought 3 more level 2 Raiden. And this is my final gut shot because that's just how well it worked last round. Let's take a look. Final round. And before we start, just look at the board. My opponent has, I would say, the perfect counter. It's got the Mustangs at level 2. It has got high level anti-air marksman, and now with elite. So these guys, once they lock onto a Raiden, they should pop them in about 2 hits, right? I have level 2 Raiden, this level 5 marksman, 1 shot. This is level 5 because my Raiden is at 38,000. This guy at 25,000 with an additional 75% in 1 shot, my level 2 Raiden. Right? It has got so much chaff at the front. They're all shielded fangs. So even with efficient chaff clear like the tarantula, it is going to take a little bit. Alright? But let's see how this round plays. gonna speed this up just a little bit. We even got the EM, so this Raiden does get range. It's gonna get all the way close. And now the chain is starting to work. We only got 3 fans left, which means the next shot is going to chain onto this marksman right here. Ooh, come on, come on. He's still being disabled. He's still being disabled. Oh, it gets the marksman in 1 shot. And on the other side, units are stuck on... Oh, on the left-hand side, the marksman. Where? What marksman? They're all gone. They're all dead. Still stuck on the Rhino, but that's okay. We got a chain off the tower, and there's the tower debuff. Thanks to the chain. I started this round with 5 level 2 Raidens. I ended this round with 5 level 2 Raidens, despite the fact that there's like a whole line of anti-air marksmen. Alright, so what did we learn so far? Well, Raiden works similarly in as the classic composition with boats. You need to have strong chaff clear. If you're playing on the line, I think tarantulas are excellent. They're just so good and so efficient at getting rid of everything, and they can also provide a lot of tanking. If you're playing more as standard, closer to the tower, I think Arclight's a little better because of its range. With the Raiden, the 2 tech you must have is range and chain. So far, I haven't really had a lot of success with Ironization, and I also haven't had a lot of success with Fork, because the whole reason you want to get chain is that you want to reach these anti-air marksmen before you're able to clear out their chaff, and this is the only technology that allows you to do that. All right, let's jump into game 2. Let's see how we can replicate its success and how we can defend against it. All right, let's go. All right, at the bottom here, I am playing as a fortified specialist, and my opponent, Mew Smith, is playing as a saber-tooth specialist. And again, this is a 2000 MMR game after the new season, so a pretty high-level game. We're starting off with tarantulas, spiders, very classic ASIM aggro, and then my opponent is having a standard board with late arriving steel balls, and then we have arc lights in front of the tower. We're going to speed through the first couple rounds because we want to see the big unit, the big Raiden in action. All right, round 1. Oh, speaking of the rounds, I started adding these fans by the tower. 1 is that I wanted to have some defense, but 2, I used to just add 2 more packs of crawlers, but I feel like the fans, they are, while not solving the immediate problem at the very beginning, but they are covering a lot of grounds in the later rounds. So having vertical fans back here protects you against any sort of wasp drops. If there's underground, you can simply put down crawlers, and then the fans also contribute to that firepower. So I just think it's a good utility move, just having fans behind the tower. In the later game, these fans will always join your army as late arriving chaff, so it's just a very good high value utility move that you can use instead of just throwing them into crawlers. All right, laser sight gets picked up. Laser sight could be very good on a Raiden later on. I was thinking about forcing the tower on the other side, but with a single tarantula and steel ball coming in, I just really don't see it happen. So instead, well, let's just fortify our strong side and let's flip the coin on the weak side. So I added the tarantula here at the corner. I've also added the additional crawlers. I wasn't expecting an arc light right here, so it was a very good move by him. And now with my crawler completely destroyed and there's nothing in front of this tarantula, they are at the mercy of this pack of steel balls. So a little bit unfortunate. And also with the saber-tooth, it's just, there's no answer for the saber-tooth. Not, at least not right now with these tarantulas. Steel balls themselves could probably take care of this problem. So a massive round here for my opponent. All right, round 3, we got a few unit drops. Level 3 marksman was pretty good, and there was also a unit drop for the Mustangs. But for now, I think both players decided to go with the level 3 marksman. For me, I just need an answer to the Sabertooth. I may not stay with the level 3 marksman forever, but for now, it is a good transition as I am moving my way into the Raiden. Additional fans here to give it my Tarantula a little bit of protection. And additional crawlers here just to kind of build the board on that side. But for now, though, I will still favor my opponent. It's just a lot of good units in the correct places. But let's see how he does. Distraction crawler on the side. Good thing I took range, so tarantulas themselves could actually deal with these crawlers without having to lose too much momentum. And again, these fans right here, I mean, they're just doing so much work. They're laying the steel balls, they're clearing the crawlers. Just a fantastic 100 investment. All right, so we're getting onto the level 2 steel balls. We're getting onto the big saber. Unfortunately, my marksmen are not participating in that battle, which is kind of sad. Okay, at least we're getting the arc light. So right now, there's no chaff clear for my opponent whatsoever. Did get tower though, and there's going to be a fight here with the fangs. Can we please get tower? We did get tower. Can we please get the marksman? Not quite. All right. Okay. I think out of all this, sticky oil is good just for me to prevent the aggro on my weak side. My opponent decided to skip. Barrier is also not bad if you're just going to giant of some sort. Usually when you have, you know, the spider combo with marksman, you can go into fortress, you can go into melting point. They're both very viable options. I've decided to just complete my board a little bit with more spiders, and once we have enough momentum, we're going to pivot very hard into the Raiden. Alright, so we're going to add a spider all the way at the bottom here. It serves two purposes. The first purpose is going to get rid of these crawlers even faster. The second purpose is that I've noticed that this spider right here was locking onto the Sabertooth for far too long. So I needed a backup tarantula so that my marksmen aren't going to shoot at the fangs and the crawlers. But the good news is he sold the Sabertooth, so I'm just going to have some additional chaff clear that is late arriving, and I can't complain about that. Looking at the board here, I am not winning the chaff war right here in the middle, which means this spider gets locked on super early with this level 4 marksman. However, I do have backup chaff clear, which means once the marksman kills the spider, I should be able to tank a little bit, and indeed I did. We have level 3 marksman doing his thing, both of them surviving all the way to the end of the round, and now the spiders are shining bright, and we are getting into round 5 with our first victory of this game. And just like the last game, we are going to get into Spider Raiden combination. We're going to take HE on Spider on some point. We're going to take range, and we're going to take chain on the Raiden at some point. Fire is being offered. We already have oil, and I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to try it, right? Because it forces at least 2 shield bubbles if my opponent wants to defend his chaff line. If he doesn't defend his chaff line, then he's going to lose a lot of units. First Raiden goes down, and it's going to be on the strong side. I have no chaff clear on the other side whatsoever. And that's pretty much it for me this round. Don't really have a lot of money, especially after a round of upgrades. Put down a single shield just to deal with a potential fire. But this is a very bad move for not shielding, especially at this juncture here. You could have shielded right here so the fire never touches the oil. All right, a pretty good round here, thanks to the oil. But next round, I'm not going to be so lucky, so let's see what the response from my opponent is going to be. He already has the Mustangs, he already has the Marksman. Efficient Giant is a great card, because I am looking to put down a bunch more Raiden here. AA gets immediately click on this level 4 Marksman. He's going to need a few more of these. Range on the Raiden. Alright, we're going to start selling things. These level 3 marksmen, they have done their duty, and it is time to retire them and swap them with the Raiden. Hackers. Interesting. So the idea of the hackers is that Raiden fires very slowly. So if you can hack your opponent's units and forces Raiden to shoot in that vicinity, and you're not going to utilize the power of the chain, right? So that's the idea anyways. But I feel like somehow this may not work too well, because you don't really have much to kill the Raiden in the later rounds. And especially now with Efficient Giant, I should be able to just get a whole bunch of Raiden every single turn. But for now though, this is actually not doing too bad. Hackers are still surviving. They're getting to my units here. Raiden does not have chain, which means it's only killing 3 units at a time. So a pretty big round here. How's my HP? HP is alright. We'll survive this round. Questionable if I will survive the next round. And this level 4 marksman is going to be level 5. It's going to one-shot this Raiden. See you later. Okay, so we got Fire Badgers and we got Vulcans. Both are pretty good cards. I like the Fire Badgers. My opponent is adding a Fortress. Level 2 Fortress is the right idea. I think level 2 Fortress has enough HP to pretty much tank forever into this level 1 Raidens, right? They will only do 6,000 damage. Now remember, the Raiden's shots, they do not converge, which means the 3 lightning does not combine into a single lightning and deal extra damage to a single lone unit. Alright, so it's going to be 3 more Raiden across the board. Decided to sell my Tarantula here because I really wanted to have the laser sight. With chain, at this point, the Raiden themselves are almost self-sufficient. They can kill large units. They can also do a little bit of chaff clear. Took the loan, took the temp range. And with 100 left over, maybe it's time to just get rid of some frontline chaff so we can get to the good stuff with the Raiden right away, which are these hackers and of course these marksmen. I've positioned the Fire Badgers in the sort of a stagger formation so that the first one will get in just behind these crawlers, and then the second one will kind of come in a little bit late. Now I'm fully aware that the hackers right now are really good into my Tarantulas, and that's one of the other reasons I didn't want to stay too long on this Tarantula. I mean, they're very good units, but right now they're just providing a little bit more of a target for my hacker friends. And now we get to see the power of the Raiden chaff clearing on their own. And we're already getting damage onto this marksman. And the marksman is still shooting at my chaff, and I'm winning the chaff war simply because I have the Raiden. But here comes the problem. My units have died. Oh, this marksman not able to clear, getting rid of one of my units here. Is this enough to seal the deal? Not quite. We got Bombard. Bombard could be pretty good into both my Raiden board and also into his board, which has got a lot of chaff, but he does have hackers and they do have a decent shield to protect themselves against the Bombard. I'm putting the Bombard right here in the middle. I'm putting oil down right here. The oil serves a dual purpose. It can protect, it can slow my opponent's units down, and if I get lucky, I can ignite it, which means he will have no chaff in front of it, and my units should be able to just cut through everything. a big round of upgrades from a Raiden, because I do expect the bombard to happen right here. Okay, so we got Loose Crawler. I think that's a bit of a panic move. I think Loose Crawler would have been really good into the Tarantulas, but I have been selling the Tarantulas. All right, we're going to take the loan. We're going to take the range. We're going to put down a few shield bubbles. My opponent did not take Bombard. All right, once again, Raiden at this number is starting to chop clear on their own. We're hitting 6 units at a time, and most of the time we're killing them. Fire goes down. All of a sudden, there's no defense whatsoever right here in the middle. Sure, we got some pretty scary forts up here. But even the forts cannot survive the constant barrage of both the chain and the primary gun from 4 Raidens. And here we're going to hit the marksman right here. We're going to jump to the tower, get power debuff. And that's going to be GG. Once again, we see the power of the Raiden. I mean, looking at the last round, right? I have barely any chaff clear. I have 2 spider, well 3 if you count this one back here. 2 squads of fire badgers, and that's about it. And most of these units are probably getting hacked by the hackers anyways. And then everything else was just from these 6 Raidens, right? All right, let's jump into a third game. This will be a defensive game. We're going to see some potential ways that you can defend against the Raiden. Let's go. All right, at the bottom here, I am playing as a supply specialist. My opponent, Scion, is playing as an amplify specialist. Again, 2000 MMR gain. He's going heavy into aggro on one side, and I am also defending with the sledgehammers. Luckily, I got the same side. Whenever I see tarantulas on the line like this, immediately my mind goes to hacker. They're just so darn good into tarantulas in the later rounds. But the problem with hackers, as you saw in the last game, is that they're so bad into the Raiden, and it's just such a hard pivot out of that composition, which means in order for you to effectively answer this tarantulas, you kind of have to get your own Raiden. Like you could not. Okay, first of all, let's talk about possible counters into aggro spiders. Hackers, which is my favorite. Phoenixes, which is, I guess, more of a mainstream counter. Problem with Phoenixes is because they are also medium units. They are also prone to chain on the Raiden, which means they will probably die to the Raiden, especially the ones with range. So that's out of the window. Into aggro tarantulas, you could probably go Forts. Forts is not a terrible way, but Forts has such slow tempo, right? By the time your first Forts comes on board, your opponent will probably have level 2 tarantulas, which has better chaff clear than your board, which you can also answer very quickly with his own melting points, or even steel ball. Tarantula steel ball on an asym aggro is still very, very strong. So maybe not Forts. You can go with melting point. Melting points in a headbutt, probably not the best unit. I mean, they take so long to charge up, and it can be easily overwhelmed with just enough crawlers. So really, like, your standard defense against aggro tarantulas all kind of fail at this point because of a pivot into the Raiden. And this is what happens. So let's take a look at how this game is gonna go. All right, we got triple tarantula right in this cage formation. Very just standard tarantula aggro stuff. All right, round 3. We got unit drops here. I could have gone with the Force, but since Wasp was offered and I don't really have any good AA, it's going to be the Wasp for me. All right, also Wasp for my opponent. This round, I decided to take the loan and ask double hackers with shield. Tarantulas on their own are not powerful enough to pop the shield, which means I get an opportunity to capture it, and it snowballs from here. Without Raiden, this is usually a win game for me, because what my opponent would do is he'll either slowly sell out of the Tarantula, because if he stays with the Tarantula, he will be behind in tempo. But what he might try to do is to get out of the Tarantulas and start transitioning into possibly forts with Mustangs, in which case I would just go double Stormcaller, or he'll try something else like, you know, boats, in which case I can go Mustangs myself. So I played this game 100 times, and it's not that difficult. But now with the Raiden, this is not a viable comp anymore. Alright, first we're gonna get to the Tarantula. Easy peasy. By the book. Gonna get to Tarantula number 2. Tarantula number 3. Cool. Getting tower, running over. Wasp doing wasp things. Tarantula number 4. Boom, boom. Looking pretty good, right? Our next round, if this were a normal game, I would expect shield, and especially advanced shield devices offer as a card. Both of us took redeployment. I wanted to get my crawler out of the flank because it was no longer serving a purpose. I was fully expecting shield. So it's going to be double Stonecrawlers for me to pop the shield. And my opponent went with double Raiden. Now, so far, it's not terrible. I mean, I can't win this round because I have no AA, except these Wasp, and Wasp don't do really well into the Raiden. Alright, still getting the Tarantulas. Alright. So here's the problem. We got 2 Raidens. They're killing everything I have. I was offered 4 marksmen. Out of all the options here, I think it's got to be the marksman. AA gets immediately clicked. And being a Raiden player, I know exactly what's going to happen. He's going to take range. He's going to take chain. And he's going to kill everything. Right? My opponent took the Typhoons. And it's just a standard Foon Raiden. Took the loan as well. Range on the arc light because I really needed chaff there. And I decided to keep the hackers because I find the shield to be pretty useful, even though it's able to tank only 1 shot, but still, that's 3 sledgehammers I could have saved. Alright, we're going to get into a bit of a chaff war here on the right. And I'm definitely going to lose that one. The hacker is now completely useless. We're still getting some units, so getting a little bit of distraction here and there. Alright, we got 2 big Raidens still firing at me. The tower is about to go down. Bye-bye tower. Getting down to 500 HP, but my opponent's only at 2500. So if I play this right, I should be able to get them, if I can get them in 1 or 2 rounds, right? So in standard play, whenever your opponent goes stuff like this, one thing that you can do, let's say this is Boat, right? One thing you can do is to put a War Factory right here, give it either Photon or Armor. We do have a Bombard turn. Now Bombard, I already have Shield, so they can work pretty well. 2 more Raiden goes down. Here comes the War Factory. Now I did sell one of the hackers, completely forgetting about that shield, and that's completely my fault. We're going to give it Photon, but in retrospect, I think Armor probably works way better. So that was another mistake for me. But first of all, let's just look how well the Photon does. I took Photon mostly because I wasn't sure like there's going to be some sort of acid response, but now I might be just thinking too much. I think Armor in this situation is universally better than Photon. And here's the idea. The War Factory should be able to clear all this front line and still be alive for a little bit longer, right? Once all this front line died, the marksman should be able to just pop these Raidens. And since the War Factory is so far forward, the Raiden, even if they have chain, would not be able to get to the War Factory, or rather would not be able to get to the marksman. And that's exactly what's happening right now. So we have the War Factory at the front. They're killing pretty much everything. And now they're dead. AA marksmen are starting to work. Alright, we're going to get 2 Raidens already. We still have Chap at the front, which means these Raidens will be stuck at shooting at this Chap for a little bit longer, while these 2 marksmen were putting the damage. But a problem with this, and like I said, you have to win in like 1 or 2 rounds, is that this is like super counterable, right? Your opponent can put down a melting point. Your opponent can put down a War Factory of their own. But in this case, I probably think melting point is your best bet. Alright, Wasp Swarm. Right here. I only have enough money for another War Factory or a technology, so I could have taken Armor, but I just don't have enough money for both. Took the Wasps. The idea for the Wasps is that I do expect a Melter, so hopefully these Wasps will fly in and do a little bit more distraction. Didn't want the Wasps to fly in right away because I want these Typhoons to actually lock onto my War Factory first. It's a little tricky maneuver, so you want the Typhoons to lock on, but you want your Wasps to kind of fly in. My opponent took Chain. Now the real problem right now is I have no anti-swarm for air units, right? I have a lot of Wasps, but they all kind of die to the Raiden, and I don't have enough money for Mustangs. I could have leveled up my Arc Lights with AA, but right now they don't have, you know, the money for it. Alright, so here's the maneuver. Unfortunately, these walls do not get in on time, which means the melting point is now onto this level 1 War Factory with Photon. It is so close at getting that melting point. Like if these walls weren't there and the marksman gets a lock on, I probably would have had this melting point, but that's okay. Because the War Factory died, and because the chain is still in effect, and because I have no anti-swarm, this is still going to be a pretty good win for my opponent. But we're starting to get the idea of a potential defense into the Raiden, right? So medium units or even chaff units are not really good into the Raiden. And if you're going to put medium or small units, you better make sure that you have enough of them to survive, and you better make sure your chaff clear is at least twice as good as your opponent. Because the Raiden themselves provide superior chaff clear with the chain technology, and it can get through the soft underbelly if your anti-Raiden unit is going to be a marksman or a phoenix, right? But having a big hunk of HP just at the front, it seems to be a pretty reliable way. Which brings me to a couple ideas So we've seen the War Factory. In fact, I've seen Rooster play his game with the War Factory at the front. Maybe having high-level forts is also a potential idea. Raidens themselves don't actually have a lot of HP, which means if you are using forts with AA, you can actually out DPS the Raiden. Right? So we're gonna watch another game where my opponent goes Raiden and I win with fortresses, and we're gonna see how that game works. All right, let's jump right into it. All right, welcome back. And we're going to jump straight into round 3 here. So we do have a unit drop. We have fortress. So far, we have units headbutting on the line. So my opponent has the tarantulas. I just have the standard sledge with arc lights. Decided to take the fortress, and my opponent adds the first Raiden. And the Raiden is going to come with chain, which means every time it shoots, it's going to hit the units behind my fortress, which is terrible because that's my only chaff clear. However, with the fortress and with AA, you can actually tie up the Raiden for quite some time, and sometimes you can just outright kill the Raiden before it even has the time to respawn. Alright, so we're getting into the headbutt situation, and of course, fortress on a headbutt into spiders are generally pretty good. Raiden's still getting a lot of working though. But here, as you can see, the Raiden is having some trouble getting through the thick armor of the fortress, even though the chain is doing quite a lot into the units around it. Getting into round 4, we're gonna get Nano. Actually, my opponent's going to get Nano. I'm just going to get a efficient tech research because I wanted to get AA onto the forts. Additional Raiden goes down. So with 15,000 HP, the Raiden themselves actually don't survive the barrage for that long. I've decided to put all 3 of my fortresses in close proximity of each other, so when they do fire the AA barrage, ideally they're firing in the same direction. And there it goes. Alright, 2 rounds of AA. I mean, the Raiden is still ridiculously strong. I mean, it's punching through the side. But with AA and with the thick HP pool of the fortress, is just having a very difficult time of actually punching all the way through. Another unit drop. Phantom Ray is the thing. But for me, I think it's better to just take the Sabertooth and sell and just put down more forts. More Raiden gets added in. Now coming in onto the other side. Nope, actually took the Stonecrawlers. I think the Stonecrawlers was a mistake here. If I were to play this round again, I would have taken the Saber and just add even more forts. The Phantom Ray at the front, there to distract that first barrage. Finally getting AA on this marksman. I had a whole bunch of wasps here on the side. Now in this game, I did have mass-produced wasps. So I wanted to use this to just distract my opponent a little bit. The more I can distract him on the side, the more my initial chaff line will survive. Alright, he's got a surprise task force here coming into my left tower. Level up my tanks so they no longer die to one shot of the Raiden. The distraction is working really nicely. These Raiden are just taking a lot of damage without actually doing it to my front line. The first one is already done. The second one is being locked on by AA marksman. Good tower timing though, but I still have 3 forts. Oh man, the chain is so good. As you can see, right? Like the marksman here completely died because of the chain effect. But it doesn't matter. We got 2 Raiden level 1. We still have 2 forts left over and a Farseer. And if we do have one more round, I would have put additional forts on the other side. So this is one of the potential ways that you can deal with the Raiden aggression. But for now, though, I feel like this unit is still very, very strong. So if you want to play the Raiden meta, just make sure the 2 techs you have to have is range, usually the first tech you take on Raiden, and then chain. Fork, ironization, right now they're just way worse than the other 2 combinations. Maybe if your opponent is going really hard into War Factory, then you want to take ironization, but honestly, there's no reason, because ironization simply does not work well with things like chain, which relies on the damage, right? Ironization reduces your attack by 70% and then reduces that again by 30% with chain. So just no reason to take these 3 tech together. With fork, it could work, right? If you want to have like real headbutting Raiden on the line in like super late rounds, but usually I would just put down more units instead of taking the 3rd tech. Very, very strong. Have a good chaff clear on the line. If you're on the line, I recommend spiders with high explosive and range. If you're in standard play, I recommend arc lights with just range and a bunch of chaff. So give it a try. I think the dev team will probably make even more rapid changes to these units in the coming weeks, but now is your window to get some juicy MMR at the beginning of Season 2. So have fun. Let me know how it goes in the comments. And if you like this video, and if you want to see another one just like this, here's another one for you. And I will see you on the next one.
Prepare your tactics. Mechabellum's calling. Deploy your fortress. The battlefield's alive with swarms.